The most important thing to remember is that it is not just you. Everybody that you know who reads has been in a reading slump. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I am going to give you a couple of tips for overcoming a reading slump. As I have just said, it is something that happens to every single reader. It's something that actually happened to me as recently as July, which is 2 months ago by now, and I came out on the other side. And that is definitely something that you can do too. So my first tip is, as I have said maybe 3 times by now, it's not just you. Remember that. It is not just you for whom this is happening. There are so many other readers who've also gone through a reading slump and you just haven't heard about it because they haven't been very vocal about it. But that doesn't mean that they haven't been standing in front of their shelves completely bereft, that they haven't put down the last 5 books that they've read. It happens to everybody. So my second piece of advice is to acknowledge that you're in a reading slump, which is a little bit easier than it sounds, because it can be really tough to kind of sit back and say, I'm not gelling with reading and I'm not gelling with books as much as I should be, as much as I want to be, as much as I usually am. It's just easy to just say that and to admit it, and then you can go on from there and you can kind of build on what you've got. You can bring back your love of reading. You can work from there. Now that we know that we're in a reading slump, what do we do to improve on it? The first thing that you can do is to change up the format. If you've been reading quite a lot of physical books at the moment, the really big hefty ones, why don't you try and read an audiobook or an ebook? Even just looking at something different or hearing a book in a different format can make the story seem much more exciting and so much more invigorating for you. The second thing that you could do is to change up the genre. So if you're reading quite a lot of thrillers at the moment and they're getting a little bit repetitive, why don't you try and read a horror or a sci-fi or try a chick lit? If you go out of your comfort zone, that might actually be the key to bring your love of reading back. Completely in the opposite vibe to that, my next piece of advice is to read an old favorite of yours again. When you go back to something that you have loved so many times before, something that you know the story back to front, you know the characters, you know what's going to happen, it doesn't put a lot of pressure on you to really engage with the book, really enjoy it. You just know you're in for a comfortable ride here, you're in for a good book, and you just know this is probably going to set me back on the path. If you've been reading a lot of really big books, like 400 or 500 pages, I would recommend to read something shorter. If you can find a set of short stories, if you can find an anthology, if you can find a manga or a comic book or anything that is just a little bit shorter, even a novella by your favorite author will just change it up a little bit, because it's a little bit of a change of pace. It's not as heavy, so you're not going into it thinking, I have to get these 400 pages read by Friday. I have to read these 500 pages or I failed. That is the complete wrong way to go into it. Just pick up something a little bit shorter, a little bit more sprightly, and you will definitely find your love of reading coming back. Of course, what you could also do is take a look at your bookshelves and get rid of the books that you're probably never going to read. Now, we all buy books, we all get books, we are all gifted books, we are all sent books, and then we just never read them. It's something that every single reader you know has done. When there are so many books, it can be really overwhelming to think, oh, what's going to be the next book that I'm really going to enjoy? So I would recommend take a really good, really critical look at your shelf and think, is this the kind of book that I really want to read? Am I ever going to read it? Am I probably going to pick it up in the next 6 months? Or is it going to be still gathering dust on my bookshelf? If you are pretty sure it's going to be still gathering dust, get rid of it. And finally, if none of those are working, maybe it's time to just take a break. If you just take 1, 2, maybe 3 days away from books, don't pick up anything, maybe plan out what you want to read next, take a look around and get excited about some new books, it might just reset you. And then you come back completely fresh. You come back with a brand new mind, brand new mentality, and you are gunning to go and get some reading done. I absolutely am sure that if you give your reading a little bit of a break, you'll be back into reading in no time. So those are some very helpful tips that I have every time that I get into a reading slump. These have definitely helped to bring me out of it. What are some reading slump tips that you have, or what do you do if you get into a reading slump? Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now get on out of here.